104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. The Knicks announcing their new front office, and we've got the man from the New York Post, Marc Berman, to help us make sense of it all. What is your take on the new powers that be for the New York Knicks?
Well, Steve Mills gets another chance. I think Knicks fans don't even remember that he was the president and general manager to start the 2013-14 season. Replaced Glenn Grunwald, and the team was coming off a 54-win season. They had injuries, they struggled, and Dolan made another terrible move by hiring Phil Jackson in March of that season, and Mills got demoted. So if you want to take the tack that Mills had nothing to do with the last 3 years that has been a complete disaster, then you say, okay, he's got another chance to do it his way. And he brings in Scott Perry. They obviously get along great. They've known each other for a while. Perry didn't have success in Orlando, but he's well respected. So in that sense, at least it's not Phil Jackson in the triangle. We're starting from the very bottom. I mean, like literally ground zero. And the rebuild is on, and Mills and Perry get a chance to do it right. Phil did it all wrong.
Marc Berman with us. Are you shocked it wasn't Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah. Well, the irony is the Mills and Isaiah Thomas don't get along at all. Mills hired Isaiah back in the day when Mills was like the garden president, more in charge of business and marketing. But he brought Isaiah in thinking it was a great idea, got a recommendation from Magic Johnson. But obviously the whole sexual harassment trial, Mills really took a tumble, and he had to leave the organization and blames Isaiah. So they do not get along. Obviously, Isaiah is trying to get back into the Knicks management fold, but Dolan does not want it. He just thinks that it's unfair to Isaiah. He'll be under too much scrutiny, and it just won't work.
Well, let's break it down to job responsibilities for each. What is the job responsibilities daily of Scott Perry and the job responsibilities of Steve Mills?
Yeah, well, Perry is going to manage, as Mills said, the coaching staff, the scouting department. He's going to call the GMs and agents, although I'm sure Mills will still do a lot of that. But they're going to work in tandem, and the bottom line is Steve Mills is the president, and if he doesn't want to do a move that Perry really wants to do, you know, it's Mills's final call. He's got to sign off on it, and they say they'll have healthy debates. But Perry will have more power than he has had ever. He's never actually had title of GM. In Orlando, he was assistant GM. In Sacramento, he had some weird title like VP of basketball operations. But he was the second man to Vlade Divac, but did not have the clout that Mills wants to give him. And Mills wants him to evaluate their scouts who have been here for a long, long time. And if he wants to bring in a couple of new guys, he's got that freedom, as long as Mills, approves it.
Talking Knicks with New York Post Marc Berman right here on 104.5 The Team. So, Marc, with everybody in place now, does Melo stay put? Is he going to go? What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, clearly they don't want him there. I mean, the whole press conference was about we're trying to build with our young core. It's all about youth, athleticism, defense. Carmelo is none of the three. They don't want to make a bad trade, and I think they want to get on top of the situation and be more in control than look like the desperate team who needs to get rid of Carmelo or the Garden's roof is going to come off or something. They want to have a stronger negotiating power. They could not get a deal done with Houston in a 2-team trade, a 3-team trade, a 4-team trade, so they want to back off and actually talk to Carmelo and see if he will. Obviously, we've reported to expand his wish list beyond Houston and Cleveland. He desperately wants to go to Houston, and he would definitely agree to Cleveland. But, the Knicks would like to find a trade, and the Blazers have some interest. The Suns may have interest. They're not a team ready to win now. The weather is great in Phoenix, but, Carmelo does want to win. That's the whole point of this. So it's going to be probably a longer process than we bargained for, but I still think it's a long shot he's on the opening night roster.
What I'm missing here is that it felt like Carmelo Anthony had the problem with Phil Jackson, or more so Phil had a problem with Melo, and he went out publicly and said he's better off playing somewhere else. but there's no longer Phil Jackson. Is this just figuring out what Carmelo Anthony's value is, or does Carmelo no longer want to be in New York?
Well, I think Phil Jackson and Steve Mills and Clarence Gaines and Allen Houston and the entire Knicks front office do not want to have Carmelo with the franchise anymore. I think this wasn't just Phil Jackson saying that Carmelo needs to go. I think he unfortunately said it way too strongly, but the organization as a whole believed that it's time to move on. He's 33 years old, getting worse. He really played poorly defensively. He's been a disappointment these past 4 years. He had a strong start in New York. I think he lost some of his confidence in late-game situations. He hasn't been a leader. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the Knicks want to move on, and they want to rebuild, and that's been an organizational goal. Unfortunately, Phil looked like the bad guy because he was so outspoken about it. Mills and Scott Perry were very diplomatic yesterday, saying, hey, if he comes back, he comes back. You know, we're still building around our young guys, but, you know, Carmelo can help us in that process. But he is not part of the future, and it wasn't just Phil's feelings. It was the entire organization.
New York Post Marc Berman with us right now on 104.5 The Team. Mark, you cover the Knicks, but you can also tell that you have a passion for them. Do you feel better about the current power structure than you have, or is it status quo?
No, I feel better. The triangle issue was such a cloud over this franchise that Phil became even more stubborn and more maniacal about. I thought when he hired Hornacek, he was moving in the right direction, realizing, this triangle thing was terrific at a certain point of history, but these millennial players don't seem to grasp it. And also, roster turnover is stronger than ever, and he'll admit it. It takes 2 years for a team to figure it out. There was very little roster turnover during his Bulls and Laker days. So I think Phil was turning a corner, and then the Knicks fell apart, and in mid-February, somehow Phil decided it was a good idea to order Hornacek to go back to the triangle, and that's been such a cloud on this franchise. And now going forward, it's about the new modern game. Let Hornacek run and gun and play like he did in Phoenix, and that's why Hardaway is a good fit. They overpaid, but they felt they had to. They want to be a modern basketball team, and anything is better than Phil Jackson. I hate to say it, greatest coach of all time. I covered him in Albany when I worked there, when he was blackballed from the NBA, and I can't believe what kind of amazing coaching career he had. But he did hurt his legacy in his 3 years and 3 months with the Knicks.
Mark, what happens at point guard? Because you said triangle, and we were all told Frank Ntilikina that he's perfect for the triangle. So, what is the situation at point guard this season?
Yeah, listen. Yesterday, Mills claimed that he would have drafted Ntilikina also, but I would like to have him take a lie detector test. I just saw the odds for Rookie of the Year. One of the websites released odds and emailed it to me. Dennis Smith, who was on the board, he's the second choice after Lonzo Ball. There are 12 listings, and Frank is not on any of is not in the top dozen for Rookie of the Year. Dennis Smith was amazing in Summer League. The Knicks, all they're talking about now is youth and athleticism. That's what Dennis Smith Jr. brings. I think Ntilikina has some athleticism. I think he's going to be a good defensive player. One scout told me the other day, Frank Ntilikina is a good piece, but Dennis Smith might be a game changer. So I think the Knicks blew it, and I think it was a Phil Jackson, Clarence Gaines Jr. choice.
Well, hopefully we don't have to keep saying that same statement we've been saying. The Knicks blew it. So
I'm used to that phrase.
Right, it's pretty much common. It's how I answer the phone now. Mark, man, we appreciate you, and we'll hit you up when we get closer to the season.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.